I never had the chance to run, leave behind the said and done, figure out what's to come. Reasons, all the bigger things I can't ignore. I'm not getting what I came here for. Gotta get ahead of something more.
What is going on, guys? Brandon Basics here, back with another YouTube video. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and if you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on your post notifications so you don't miss any posts. And welcome to the channel, and I'm glad to have you here. Today, I thought I'd just do a little something different, and I kind of want to lead the channel in this direction. I don't know, I feel like a lot of fitness channels don't really go into this kind of direction, and I'm talking about showing the behind the scenes, giving a little bit more than just the gym and nutrition. While all that stuff is important, and I'm sure you guys would love to learn a lot of tips that I know and stuff that I can teach you to get to your goals faster, because that's all what we want, right? We want those little shortcuts. They're gonna get us through the hard work a little bit easier and make it a little easier to obtain those goals. But at the same time, I wanna do something that's different and new and kind of bring something new to the fitness industry. And with that said, I hope you guys like this idea, but I want to show you a little bit on my personal side of things and how I edit my photos for Instagram. So, without any further ado, let's get right into this video. And if you guys have a picture you want to edit, or a phone next to you, or a computer, you can edit on anything. I personally use my MacBook Pro, and sometimes when I'm on the go, I'll use my iPhone just because it's more convenient and I like to match kind of how the picture is going to look on my phone already. So it's a lot easier to see the final product since it's already on your phone. You don't have to export anything and send it on over if you don't have AirDrop. It's just a lot more convenient. So with that said, hopefully you guys can learn a thing or two from my tips on editing my photos. And I'm going to show you 3 different edits that I've done, and they're on my Instagram. And make sure to follow my Instagram at brandon.basics. Before we start, once you did that, then follow me along with this tutorial and let's hop right into it. So first things first is getting something to edit on. So like I said, I chose my MacBook Pro for today. And then you want to make sure you have an editing program. Now, you can use multiple editing programs. A lot of them do the same job, but the number one, I think the one that just trumps all the rest, it's going to be Lightroom. And Lightroom is so good for photos, guys. It covers so much. It's very intuitive, and it'll make your pictures go to the next level. But there's also a few things you need to do first. Before we even get into the edit, you guys need to make sure you're shooting in a format called RAW, okay? So there's 2 different formats, well, 2 main ones. There's JPEG and RAW. So in your camera, if you're shooting on an actual camera, make sure when you go in your settings, whether if it's on Canon, Sony, Nikon, whatever you use, change the format of your pictures to RAW, so therefore you'll get more information in your photos that you can work with later when you actually put it in your editor and start playing with things. It'll have more detail in that file where you can bring back more information that was lost in the shadows or the highlights or the midtones, and it'll just give your picture that much of an edge over everyone else's, okay? And that's what gives you the professional look. In my opinion, if you don't shoot in RAW, you're missing out, guys, because JPEG can only do so much. It's kind of like you shoot it and it is what it is right out of the camera. If you don't want to edit, then sure, go ahead and shoot JPEG. But if you want to edit, like this whole video is about, and what I do, and what literally everyone else does in the industry, make sure to shoot RAW, okay? So I just opened up Lightroom, and I am going to be showing you this photo first. So if we look right here, this is going to be the final product, and this is how it looks on my Instagram. And I'm going to walk you guys through exactly how I edited it. So let's get right on into it. The first thing that I like to do is, before I even touch any of the settings, I like to just change the crop. So I'm going to go over to crop, and the Instagram crop is a 4:5. So I'll change it to 4:5 right off the bat. Just kind of move it to where I think looks good. That looks about right. Now from here, I will start with basic adjustments. So it looks a little underexposed, so I'm going to bring up the exposure just a tad. That looks pretty good right there. And now I'm gonna add a little bit of contrast just because I think it can use a little bit more, but we're gonna bring back some detail, like I said, right after. I'll play with that. It looks good to me. Now, the highlights are a little bit high on my skin, so I'm gonna turn them down a bit. And the shadows, you can use a little bit more detail on the shadows. So I'm gonna bring the shadows up quite a bit. There we go, looks pretty good. Now whites, just to give it a little punchier look, I'm gonna raise them just ever so slightly. And blacks, I'm gonna bring them down a little bit. Looks about right. You know what? I'm gonna bring the shadows up even more, just because there's kind of too much contrast going on. That looks way better. Okay, so now we got our basic exposure done, and what that's gonna do is allow you to have your foundation so you can go edit your colors and details in your photo a little bit later. But the first thing, and the reason why it's first, is make sure you get your exposure correct. So all that first tab right here under light, that whole thing is going to be your exposure. So just getting the light and the luminance correct is going to help so much to have a perfectly exposed image. So there we go. On to the next is going to be color. So white balance looks pretty good. And if you guys don't know about white balance, basically going to the left is going to make your image cooler, and going to the right is going to make it warmer. So you can kind of go for whatever mood you like. If you want something more cool, then go for that. Something more warm, or you want to make your skin tone pop out more, then go for a warmer tone. Same with tint. Tint's going to add that magenta or the greens into your photo. So we're going to leave that alone for right now. I'm going to bump up the saturation just a little bit. The original, I bumped it up to 15, so we'll go around 15. Looks pretty good to me. We're going to make it a little cooler. Right about there. Actually add a little bit of magenta in there just to fix some white balance issues with my skin tone. And now this is the fun part. This is probably my favorite part about editing, and it's going and tweaking with the colors, because this is what's going to give you your look that's going to stand out compared to everyone else. You want to get your tones right when it comes to like blacks, and just making sure you can crush your blacks a little bit. And what that means is you can play around with the tone curve right here. The tone curve is very, very good and very powerful. That's a whole nother video I can make just on the tone curve. If that's something you guys would like to see, then comment down below and I'll make sure to cover that. But what basically this does is it plays around with everything and adjusts those fine little adjustments that are basically all in between these sliders right here. So if you could compact all those sliders into one thing, that's what the tone curves would be. So right here is going to be your shadows. Your blacks are going to be on the edges, so you can really make it crazy contrasty, but you can bring it up, and that's what gives that nice faded look that a lot of people go for. So that's how you get that faded look, in case you were wondering. And then you can bring up your midtones are going to be right in the middle, hence the word midtones, and then your highlights are going to be this top portion right here, and then your whites, your white point is going to be that top one as well. So you can bring it down, give it like more of a gray look to your whites so they're not so punchy. But yeah, that's basically that. And it does add contrast, so be careful when playing with this because it's very powerful. Like I said, if you make huge adjustments, I mean, you're gonna see quite quickly it can change it very drastically. So be careful when working with that. A slight S-curve is what usually most people will use, or even in Hollywood or films, or most photos just have a slight S-curve, which is basically something like that, where it's just a little bit faded right there in the shadows, bringing it down to make some contrast and bring the midtones back up. Sometimes you can bring the highlights up if you still want even more contrast, but for the most part, slight S-curve will do the trick. Now back to colors and tones. So for the color panel, we are going to use the full color mixer. You can use one individually and go through them all, like hue, saturation, luminance, but what I like to do is have them all open just right in front of me so I can go through each color and adjust each specific hue, saturation, and luminance as I go through all the colors. So what I'll do first is I'll usually make my reds a little bit oranger, just because I have really red skin for some reason. It's annoying, but it is what it is. So I will bring up the reds as well, so they're kind of whiter and a little less saturated. Sometimes I'll even bring down the saturation just a tiny bit, but you got to be careful with that, because you'll notice in areas like my lips and stuff, if I actually bring down the saturation too much, well, then you lose pigmentation completely. So be careful with that, but that looks about right to me. Next, we're gonna move over to the oranges and do the same thing. Now for the oranges on this one, I'm actually gonna make everything a little bit more red. So I'm gonna shift it over to the left on the hue. I'm gonna increase the saturation a little bit. Just a tiny bit. I'm gonna do a little bit less than that. That looks about right. And I'm gonna bump up the luminance to make me a little bit brighter. That looks about right. Now with the yellows, I'm gonna bring the yellows all the way, or almost all the way, to make them orange, more orange. And I'm gonna desaturate it a little bit. I'm gonna bring down, the luminance. Now with the greens, I'm going to turn the greens to a yellow and desaturate it a little bit and bring the luminance all the way down. It looks about right. Same thing with the hue. For the cyan, we're going to bring this a little more blue on the bluer side. Leave everything else alone. Make the image overall a little bit more blue. Don't gotta worry about purple. Don't gotta worry about magenta. There's really nothing to play around with there. That looks about right to me. Now we're gonna move over to the effects panel. Now the effects panel is one of the most abused panels that there is, because it's so easy to get carried away with it. Now you'll see texture and clarity, the main top two ones right here. What this does, texture is gonna add a lot of detail to your skin, hence the word texture. It's gonna make your skin literally have texture to it. So let's see, if we take it away, it's kind of soft on the edges right here. Well, let's say we do something extreme, you can see a lot more textures added, and when we zoom out too, you can easily see that. So we don't want to go too overboard. And same with clarity. Clarity is gonna basically make the almost, it plays around with sharpness, but it's gonna make the blacks and the whites, so it's adding contrast but to the detail. Okay, so what I mean is, let's show you an example. If we turn it all the way up, it's going to make the whites very white and the blacks very black, okay? But it's also going to do this not really playing around with the color so much as like desaturating it. When you add actual contrast to your image, it's going to add saturation too, and it's way more harsh on the total image, not just on selective parts like parts with detail. So that's what clarity is going to do. So clarity does help, and texture when used properly. So we are going to add some clarity. That looks about right, and some texture as well. That looks good to me right about there. Just to make the cuts pop a little bit more. And that's how people make their abs stick out, okay? So be careful. What you see on the internet is not always true, alright? Just know that, guys. And I'm going to add a little bit of a vignette. Yeah, it looks about right to me. Now moving on to detail. I'm going to sharpen this image. What I usually like to go is around 100. I like to sharpen it a lot, but then don't just sharpen your images, guys, because it will make a really unnatural look. As you can see, it's just way overly sharpened. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come into masking. We're gonna hold down the Option key if you're on a Mac, and you are going to drag this slider over, and this is basically masking out everything. In black is what's masked, what's white is so sharpened. So we're gonna make sure we're just sharpening our edges of things. So that looks about right, just to make the edges pop out a little bit more. That's good. And if you want to check it zoomed out, just hold the Option key again. Slider, it looks good to me, perfect. Now noise reduction is very powerful as well, and it comes in handy a lot. So if you shot your image and there's a lot of noise, which you can see in this area of the screen right here in the shadows, you want to minimize some of it, then you can just go ahead and slide it up a little. And this thing's very powerful as well, so you slide it a whole lot to 100, you'll get rid of all the noise, but then as you can see, there's no sharpness to this photo at all. It looks almost like a painting. So be careful with that. It does help, but it's overly now denoised, and that just looks not natural at all. So it's okay to have a little bit of noise. We're gonna go around 11, looks good to me right there. And optics, this panel is very good. It will eliminate those little errors that your camera makes, because when your camera takes a photo, each lens you put on it alters how the photo is going to look in some sense. Whether if it's a wide angle lens or it's a zoomed in lens, it's going to have a little bit of distortion going on and vignetting depending on what kind of lens you're using. And older lenses tend to have a little bit more vignetting, like vintage lens say. So making sure to check remove chromatic abrasion. That's going to remove these little misinformation parts where the camera couldn't register properly. So make sure to click that and enable lens corrections as well. And you see that is going to help a lot with the distortion before and after. So that's what that's going to do. And that's why I also added a vignette. So what I'll do also is come back to the vignette panel. I'm going to add a little bit more vignette just to counteract that. That looks good to me. And yeah, guys, that's basically going to be the photo right there. So before and after, that is the final photo right there. I'm happy with how that looks. Now let's check the original. Pretty similar, just the colors were a little off in the original. Kind of more happy with how it looks on the second one. So that is how you get that look right there. Now moving on to the next photo, I'm gonna kind of just run through these really quick because I explain basically how I edit all my photos. I go through that very same process. So now we're gonna apply that same process to these other photos. Now this one, I'm so happy how it came out because this photo was shot at Alpha Elite during golden hour, and the way the sun was hitting through the window, it lit up the ground perfectly, as you can see right here. So golden. I just love how the teal and orange contrast each other, that typical cinematic Hollywood look. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and dive into this photo. So first thing, I'm gonna come over, change that crop to 4:5. Right there. Looks about right. Actually, I'm going to leave it a little lower. There's going to be the final before and after this photo. Happy with how that looks. On to the last photo now. This photo, I want to show you a little bit of what a non-gym photo would look like. Now, this is still fitness related, so if you guys got some fire clothes or some new gym gear and you want to go to the streets, take some cool photos. I want to show you guys how I edit my casual photos. So this is something I took in the brand new Young LA jeans that they just came out with. Super clean. I paired it with an Alpha Elite top. I love how these photos came out. If you guys haven't seen it already, I did a full video with this photo shoot, a little behind the scenes on how I take my pictures in real life and how I actually go about a photo shoot. So make sure to go watch that video. I'll link it above in the little iCards so you can click that. But yeah, let's get right on to this one. And there is going to be the before and after, and I'm happy with how that looks. The original is slightly different with the colors, but I'm happy with how this one looks. Now going over it a second time, kind of see little things that I would have changed that first time around. But yeah, that is going to conclude my whole entire process of how I edit my videos. So I hope you guys learned a thing or two about how I actually edit, and you guys can use these same tips and principles that I use on my photos on yours. But just remember, every single photo is going to be different. So how one edit works on one picture may not work the same for the other one. Just remember that same process I went through. It'll help you guys a lot. And I hope you guys can go out there and create some amazing photos and share it with the world. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button and drop a like and comment on this video if you found it helpful. And if you like this kind of content, let me know. I'll be sure to make more of it, because that's the route I want to take you guys. I want to show you just more than the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the fitness world. It's time we change it up, and I take you guys even further than that limit. With that said, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next one.